She walked into the sales floor on her first day carrying a leather briefcase from 1994, wearing a tailored suit while everyone else wore hoodies and jeans. And when she introduced herself as the new senior account executive, the 26-year-old sales director actually snorted. "Senior is right," he said, loud enough for the whole team to hear. "My grandma has the same briefcase." The room erupted in laughter. Someone whispered, "Did HR really hire someone's grandmother?" Another said, "She probably doesn't even know what Salesforce is." But when the sales director, cocky, arrogant, convinced his youth made him invincible, bet her $1,000 that she couldn't close the impossible enterprise deal that had rejected their company for 3 straight years, she just smiled. "Make it $10,000, she said quietly. "Because when I close this, I want you to remember what it cost you to underestimate a woman who's been selling since before you were born." 31 days later, Barbara Chun, age 58, walked into that same sales floor and placed a signed contract on the director's desk. $10.7 million over 3 years with unlimited expansion options. The room went silent, and the sales director holding the contract was shaking hands. Whispered 4 words that would change that company's culture forever. "How did you do it?" Barbara Chun was 58 years old, and she was standing in the parking lot of NextGen Software Solutions at 7:43 a.m. on a Monday morning, trying to decide if she was making a terrible mistake. She'd taken this job because she needed it, because 3 years of unemployment had drained her savings to $14,700, because her husband, Frank's Parkinson's disease, was progressing, and they needed health insurance more than they needed dignity, because at 58, with 36 years of B2B software sales experience, she'd applied to 284 jobs and gotten exactly 2 interviews and 1 offer. This offer, junior account executive, $65,000 base salary, plus commission. No mention that she'd spent the previous decade making $240,000 a year as VP of Enterprise Sales at a competing firm. No acknowledgement that she'd closed over $180 million in deals during her career. Just an entry-level position at a company run by people half her age who'd probably never heard of her. But she needed the health insurance. Frank needed the health insurance. So here she was. Barbara picked up her briefcase, genuine leather, bought in 1994 when she'd made her first major sale, carried to every significant meeting of her career and walked toward the building. NextGen Software Solutions occupied the top 3 floors of a modern glass building in downtown Seattle. The lobby was all exposed, brick, industrial lighting, and motivational quotes painted on the walls in trendy fonts. "Hustle harder, disrupt or die, move fast and break things." Barbara had seen these same slogans in a dozen other tech startups. Different buildings, same empty philosophy. The receptionist was young, maybe 23, with pink hair and multiple facial piercings. She looked up when Barbara approached. "I'm Barbara Chun. It's my first day. I'm supposed to report to Tyler Morrison in sales." The receptionist typed something. "Oh yeah, you're the new AA. Tyler's on the 7th floor. Take the elevator, turn left, you can't miss it. 7th floor." Barbara took the elevator up, watching her reflection in the polished steel doors. She'd dressed carefully. Navy suit, cream blouse, moderate heels. Professional. The way salespeople used to dress before business casual became code for wear or whatever. The elevator doors opened onto an open floor plan that looked like every tech company Barbara had seen in the past decade. Rows of desks without dividers, standing desks, beanbag chairs in corners, a ping-pong table, a fully stocked bar cart. Young people, so young, hunched over laptops, talking on headsets, typing frantically. Barbara felt every one of her 58 years. "You must be Barbara." A man approached, early 30s, wearing jeans and a hoodie that said, "Coffee, Code, Close." He extended his hand. "Tyler Morrison, Director of Sales. Welcome to the team." "Thank you," Barbara said, shaking his hand. Professional grip, eye contact, the basics. "Let me show you to your desk and introduce you to the team." He led her through the open floor to a desk in the middle of the room, not by the windows, not in a quiet corner, right in the middle of the chaos. "Team!" Tyler called out, and gradually people stopped working and looked up. "This is Barbara Chun, our new account executive. She's got ... got a quotes." He glanced at a paper in his hand, reading off her resume. Double quotes ... got a lot of experience, mostly in legacy software sales. She'll be focusing on our SMB accounts to start. Barbara's jaw tightened. Legacy software sales. SMB accounts. She'd spent the last decade selling enterprise contracts worth millions to Fortune 500 companies. And they were starting her on small and medium businesses. But she said nothing. just smiled. Barbara, this is the team. Tyler gestured around. That's Kyle, Jasmine, Marcus, Chun, Brittany, and Derek. They'll help you get up to speed. The team looked like they'd just graduated college. Kyle couldn't have been older than 25. Jasmine maybe 27. None of them looked particularly interested in helping her with anything. Hey, Kyle said, not getting up from his chair. His eyes traveled from Barbara's suit to her briefcase to her face, and she saw the assessment happen in real time. Old. Nice briefcase, Jasmine said, and something in her tone made it clear it wasn't a compliment. Vintage. A few people laughed. It was a gift, Barbara said evenly. From 1994, when I closed my first 7-figure deal. The laughter stopped for a moment. Then Marquise, a young man with a carefully groomed beard, said, 7 figures? In 1994? That's like what, $100,000? $1.2 million, Barbara corrected. Software licensing agreement with Boeing. Boeing still buys software? Derek asked, genuinely confused. Barbara just smiled. She'd been in tech sales for 36 years. She'd heard every variation of "wow, you're old" that existed. Okay, well, let's get you set up, Tyler said, clearly eager to move past the awkward introductions. Your computer's already logged in. We use Salesforce for CRM, Slack for communication, and we have weekly pipeline reviews every Monday at 9 a.m. Your quota is $400,000 annually with a 20% commission rate on everything you close. Sound good? $400,000 quota. Barbara used to close that in a quarter, sometimes in a month. Sounds fine, she said. Great. Kyle, can you spend an hour showing Barbara how we use Salesforce in our sales process? Kyle looked annoyed but nodded. Sure. Tyler walked away and Kyle rolled his chair over to Barbara's desk with obvious reluctance. Okay, so Salesforce is our CRM. Do you know what a CRM is? Customer Relationship Management System, Barbara said. I've been using Salesforce since 2006. Oh. Kyle looked deflated. Well, we have a specific sales process here. It's pretty advanced. 4-stage pipeline, lots of automation, AI-powered lead scoring, standard enterprise sales process, Barbara noted. Prospect, qualify, propose, close. Right. But we use a lot of modern tools. Like we have this AI that predicts which leads are most likely to close. I'm familiar with predictive analytics and CRM systems, Barbara interrupted gently. Kyle, I appreciate the training, but I've been using these tools for a long time. Maybe you could just give me the login credentials and let me explore on my own? Kyle looked offended. Tyler said I should train you, and you did, Barbara said, very thoroughly. Thank you, Kyle rolled back to his desk, muttering something under his breath that Barbara didn't catch but could imagine. She logged into Salesforce and started exploring the system. It was exactly what she'd expected. Standard configuration, decent lead lists, poorly maintained data. Half the contacts had incomplete information. The lead scoring system was using basic demographic filters that any competent sales professional could have set up in 30 minutes. This wasn't cutting edge, this was basic. Barbara spent the next hour cleaning up her assigned lead list, adding missing information, researching companies. The work she'd been doing since 1989, before half this team was born. At 11:47 a.m., Tyler called an impromptu meeting. Team, gather around. We need to talk about the Continental insurance deal, everyone groaned. Barbara looked up, curious. I know, Tyler said. But corporate is asking for an update. We've been pursuing Continental for 3 years. They're a $10.7 million opportunity over 3 years if we can close them. But they keep rejecting our proposals. Because their CIO hates us, Jasmine said. She's said no to us 4 times. She literally told me last month that NextGen isn't enterprise ready. Which is bullshit, Marcus added. Our software is better than what they're currently using. Doesn't matter if she won't even look at our demos, Derek said. Tyler nodded. I'm supposed to report to the CEO today about our strategy for Continental. Anyone have ideas? Silence. Barbara raised her hand slightly. May I ask a question? Sure, Tyler said, looking surprised that she'd spoken. Why does their CIO think you're not enterprise ready? Because she's old school, Kyle said. She wants on-premise software, dedicated support, all this legacy stuff we don't do anymore. We're cloud-native, fully SaaS, modern architecture. And have you tried addressing her specific concerns, Barbara asked? Showing how your cloud solution actually solves the problems she thinks on-premise software solves? We've sent her like 20 emails, Jasmine said. Have you met with her in person? She won't take our meetings. Why not? Because ... quotes, Jasmine hesitated. She said we're too young and inexperienced to understand enterprise needs. There it was. The same age discrimination Barbara had faced for 3 years, but in reverse. A 50-something CIO who didn't trust 20-something sales reps to understand her business. What if someone with enterprise experience approached her? Barbara suggested. Someone she might see as a peer rather than a kid trying to sell her something. The room went quiet. Then Kyle laughed. "Are you volunteering, Grandma?" The room erupted. Not polite chuckles, but actual laughter. Jasmine covered her mouth. Marcus high-fived Kyle. "Dude," Derek said between laughs. "That's brutal." Tyler was trying not to laugh, but failing. "Kyle, come on, that's not appropriate." But he was still smiling. They were all smiling. Barbara felt her face go hot. Not with embarrassment, she was long past that. With anger. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm volunteering." The laughter died down. "Barbara," Tyler said, still suppressing a smile, "Continental's an enterprise account. We assign those to our senior AEs with proven track records here. You're just starting. Maybe focus on your SMB leads first." "I've sold to enterprises for 36 years, Barbara said, including 15 years at companies that competed directly with Continental Insurance. I know their industry, I know their pain points, and I guarantee I can get a meeting with their CIO." "How?" Kyle challenged. "She won't even answer our emails." Because you're sending emails," Barbara said. "Enterprise CIOs don't respond to emails from salespeople they don't know. You need a warm introduction, or you need to provide immediate value, or you need to approach through channels they actually pay attention to. And you can do that?" Tyler asked, skepticism clear in his voice. "I can try." Tyler looked at his team, then back at Barbara. Something shifted in his expression. Not respect exactly. More like amusement, like he'd just thought of something funny. "Tell you what," Tyler said, "I'll make you a deal. If you can close Continental and I mean actually close them, sign contract. Money transferred, I'll personally give you $1,000. And if I can't," Barbara asked, "then you admit that maybe enterprise sales has changed since the 90s and stick to your SMB accounts like you're supposed to. It was a setup, a joke." The entire team was waiting for her to back down so they could mock her for overestimating herself. Barbara had 3 choices: accept the impossible challenge and probably fail, decline and confirm their assumption that she was a has-been, or change the terms. She chose option 3. "Make it $10,000, Barbara said. The room went silent. "What?" Tyler said. "If I close Continental, you give me $10,000, and I get moved to enterprise accounts permanently. And I get to present the deal at the next company all-hands meeting, Barbara," Tyler said, his smile faltering. "Continentals has rejected us 4 times over 3 years. They're never going to buy from us." "Then you have nothing to lose," Barbara pointed out. "If I fail, you lose nothing. If I succeed, you close the biggest deal in company history and pay me $10,000 out of your commission. Seems like a good bet for you." Tyler looked at his team. Kyle was grinning. "Brit, this is going to be hilarious." "Okay," Tyler said. "Deal. You have, let's say, 60 days. If you can close Continental in 60 days, I'll pay you $10,000 out of my own pocket." He extended his hand. Barbara shook it. "See you in 60 days, she said. Barbara Chun left NextGen's office at 5:47 p.m. on her first day, walked to her 12-year-old Honda Civic in the parking garage, and sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes before starting the engine. Her hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, from anger and humiliation and the weight of a bet she probably shouldn't have made. $10,000. 60 days. An enterprise account that had rejected the company 4 times. What had she been thinking? The drive home took 38 minutes through Seattle traffic. Barbara used the time to think, to plan, to push past the emotion and get to strategy. Enterprise sales wasn't about being young or cool or having the latest technology. It was about understanding your client's pain points, building relationships, demonstrating value, and closing with confidence. Barbara had done this hundreds of times. She could do it again. She just needed to do it better than she'd ever done it before. Home was a small 2-bedroom apartment in Renton, about 20 minutes south of Seattle. Barbara and Frank had downsized 3 years ago, when the mortgage on their house became unaffordable after Barbara lost her job as VP of Enterprise Sales at Cloudforce Systems. Restructuring, they'd called it. Making room for younger leadership, they'd explained. As if Barbara's 33 years of sales experience somehow made her less capable than a 35-year-old with an MBA and no track record. She'd taken the severance package, $140,000, 6 months of health insurance continuation, and assumed she'd find another VP position quickly. She'd been wrong. Over the next 3 years, Barbara had applied to 284 sales positions. She'd gotten 2 interviews. Both had ended with some variation of, "We're looking for someone who can grow with the company," or "We need fresh perspectives," or your salary expectations are too high for what we're offering. Translation, you're too old and we don't want to pay you what you're worth. A severance money had run out 2 years ago. She'd depleted her retirement accounts to pay Bill's early withdrawal penalties. Taxes, watching 40 years of careful saving evaporate. She'd burned through their emergency fund. She'd taken freelance consulting gigs that paid $50 an hour, a fraction of what she used to make. And then Frank's Parkinson's diagnosis had come. The disease was progressing slowly, which was the only mercy. But slowly still meant medical bills, specialists, medications that cost $1,200 a month even with insurance. Insurance they were about to lose if Barbara didn't find a job with benefits. So she'd taken the next-gen offer. $65,000 base salary, less than a third of what she used to make plus commission. And health insurance that covered Frank's medications. It was survival, not success. But if she could close Continental Insurance, everything would change. $10,000 from Tyler, yes. But more importantly, commission on a $10.7 million deal. At 20% commission rate, that was $2.14 million in revenue, which meant approximately $428,000 in commission over 3 years. That was life-changing money. That was pay off medical debt and rebuild retirement savings money. That was Frank gets the best care available money. Barbara just needed to do the impossible. Frank was in his recliner when Barbara walked in, watching Jeopardy and working on the crossword puzzle from the morning paper. His hands trembled slightly as he held the pen. The Parkinson's made fine motor control increasingly difficult, but his mind was still sharp. "How was the first day?" he asked, looking up with a smile that made Barbara's heart ache. Even sick, even declining, he was still the man she'd fallen in love with 40 years ago. "Interesting," Barbara said, setting down her briefcase and kissing his forehead. "I made a bet with my boss." "What kind of bet?" "If I close a specific enterprise deal in 60 days, he gives me $10,000. Frank whistled. "That's a significant bet." "What deal?" "Continental Insurance. They've rejected the company 4 times over 3 years. The sales team thinks it's impossible, but you don't." "I think it's difficult, not impossible. There's a difference." Frank smiled. "That's my Barbara. Always seeing possibilities where others see walls, or I'm delusional and I just made a fool of myself on my first day," Barbara said, sitting down on the couch. "The sales director called me grandma in front of the entire team." Frank's expression hardened. "He what?" "It's fine. I've dealt with worse. It's not fine. That's age discrimination. It's tech startup culture," Barbara corrected. "They worship youth. Anyone over 40 is a dinosaur. Anyone over 50 is actively mocked. You should report him to HR and get fired on my first day." "We need this job, Frank. We need the health insurance." Frank looked down at his trembling hands. "I hate this. I hate that you have to take a job that pays a third of what you're worth. Because of my medical bills." "This isn't your fault," Barbara said firmly. "This is the fault of a broken system that discards experienced professionals and treats illness as a personal failing. You didn't choose to get Parkinson's. And you didn't choose to be 58 in an industry that thinks 30 is old." "No," Barbara agreed. "But I can choose how I respond. And I choose to prove that 26-year-old sales director wrong that night." After Frank had gone to bed, Barbara sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and started researching. Not Continental Insurance, she'd get to them. First, she needed to understand NextGen's product better than anyone at the company understood it. She spent 4 hours reading through every page of their website. Every product specification, every case study, every customer testimonial. She downloaded their white papers, studied their pricing models, analyzed their competitive positioning. NextGen sold enterprise resource planning ERP software, the systems that companies use to manage operations, inventory, human resources, finances. It was a crowded market dominated by giants like SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft Dynamics. NextGen's angle was that they were modern and cloud-native and built for the digital age, which meant nothing, Barbara noted. Every software company said the same thing, but digging deeper into the technical specifications, Barbara found something interesting. NextGen software actually was more flexible than the legacy systems. The API integrations were more robust. The user interface was cleaner. The reporting capabilities were more sophisticated. The problem wasn't the product. The product was good. The problem was that NextGen's young sales team didn't know how to sell to enterprise clients. They were trying to sell on features and modernity. When enterprise clients bought based on risk mitigation, ROI projections, and vendor relationships, enterprise sales was about trust. And you couldn't build trust with a 25-year-old sales rep who'd never worked in the industry you were trying to sell into. At 1:23 a.m., Barbara finally closed her laptop and went to bed. She had a plan forming. It would take research, strategy, patience, and probably more rejection before it worked. But it would work. It had to. Over the next 2 weeks, while Tyler's young sales team continued their regular activities and occasionally made jokes about Grandma's impossible quest, Barbara executed a strategy she'd perfected over 36 years of enterprise sales. Step 1. Deep research. She spent hours studying Continental Insurance, their history, their current technology stack, their recent financial reports, their strategic initiatives. She read every press release from the past 5 years. She studied LinkedIn profiles of their executives. She found articles written by their CIO, Eleanor Martinez, about the challenges of enterprise technology transformation. Eleanor was 56 years old. She'd been with Continental for 23 years, rising from IT manager to CIO. She had an engineering degree from MIT and an MBA from Stanford. She'd overseen 3 major technology transformations at Continental, and was known in the industry as someone who was technically sophisticated but deeply skeptical of vendor hype. In other words, exactly the kind of executive who would hate being sold to by 20-something sales reps with no real-world experience. Step 2. Identify the real problem. Barbara read through NextGen's previous proposals to Continental. Tyler had reluctantly given her access after she'd pestered him for 3 days. The proposals were slick, professional, feature-focused, and completely wrong for the audience. They talked about cutting-edge technology and disrupting legacy systems and moving fast to stay. Competitive. All the buzzwords that excited young tech people. But Eleanor Martinez didn't care about buzzwords. Reading her articles and speeches, Barbara could see that Eleanor cared about 3 things: reliability, security, and vendor accountability. She'd been burned by flashy technology vendors before. She wanted partners who understood enterprise constraints, who could support 24/7's operations, who wouldn't go bankrupt and leave her with unsupported software. NextGen's proposals had addressed none of those concerns. They'd basically said, "We're cool and modern, trust us." No wonder Eleanor had rejected them 4 times. Step 3. Find the connection point. Barbara spent hours on LinkedIn mapping connections between herself and Eleanor. 6 degrees of separation, usually less. And there it was. Sarah Kendrick. Sarah had been Barbara's colleague at Cloudforce Systems 15 years ago. They'd worked together on a massive implementation for a different insurance company. Sarah had since moved on and was now VP of Operations at Continental Insurance. Barbara stared at Sarah's profile for a long moment. They hadn't spoken in probably 10 years. Would Sarah even remember her? Only one way to find out. Barbara crafted a LinkedIn message. "Sarah, I hope this message finds you well. It's been far too long since we worked together at Cloudforce. I've been following your impressive career at Continental. Congratulations on the VP role. I'm reaching out because I recently joined NextGen Software Solutions and I'm working with clients in the insurance space. I'd love to reconnect and hear about what Continental's working on these days. Would you have 20 minutes for a coffee catch-up? Best regards, Barbara Chun." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came 14 hours later. "Barbara, of course I remember you. You saved our implementation at Pacific Northwest Insurance when everyone else said it couldn't be done. I'd love to catch up. Coffee next Tuesday at 10 a.m.? Step 4. Build the bridge. Barbara met Sarah at a Starbucks near Continental's headquarters. Sarah looked older. They all did, but her handshake was still firm and her eyes were still sharp. "It's so good to see you," Sarah said as they sat down with their coffees. "What have you been up to since Cloudforce?" Barbara gave her the sanitized version. "Left Cloudforce 3 years ago, did some consulting, recently joined NextGen." She didn't mention the unemployment, the financial struggles, the humiliation of taking a junior position at 58. "And now you're at NextGen," Sarah said. "Interesting. Eleanor's been looking at their software." Barbara's heart rate picked up, but she kept her expression neutral. "I saw that in the proposal history. I understand she had concerns about their enterprise readiness. She has concerns about working with a company run by kids," Sarah said bluntly. "No offense, but your sales team looks like they just graduated from college. Eleanor's been in IT for 35 years. She's not going to trust a company where the CEO is younger than her children." "That's fair," Barbara said. "But the software itself is actually quite good. I've reviewed the technical specs. It would solve a lot of Continental's integration challenges. Then why are you telling me instead of selling to Eleanor? Because Eleanor won't take a meeting with NextGen's regular sales team. And I'm hoping you might facilitate an introduction. Not as a sales pitch," Barbara added quickly, "as a peer-to-peer conversation. 2 experienced professionals who've actually implemented enterprise software discussing whether a particular solution might work. Sarah studied her for a long moment. Eleanor hates sales pitches. So do I, Barbara said. That's why I'm not going to give her one. I'm going to have a conversation about her actual problems and whether our software might genuinely solve them. And if it doesn't, I'll tell her that too. You'd walk away from a potential sale if it wasn't the right fit. I've done it before, Barbara said. There's no point selling something that won't work. It just creates an angry customer and a ruined reputation. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, I'll introduce you. But Barbara, if you waste Eleanor's time or try to manipulate her, she'll never forgive me. And I'll never forgive you. Understood, Barbara said. I appreciate the trust. The email from Sarah came 3 days later. Barbara, I spoke with Eleanor. She's willing to meet with you for 30 minutes next Thursday at 2 p.m. at Continental's offices. She's skeptical, but she trusts my judgment. Don't make me regret this. Sarah Barber stared at the email. 30 minutes with Eleanor Martinez, the CIO who'd rejected NextGen 4 times, the gatekeeper to a $10.7 million deal. She had one shot. 30 minutes to build trust, demonstrate value, and convince Eleanor that NextGen represented by Barbara was worth a deeper look. No pressure. She replied to Sarah, "Thank you. I won't let you down." Then she opened a new document and started preparing. Not a sales pitch, a conversation guide. Questions she needed to ask. Problems she needed to understand. Value she needed to demonstrate. This wasn't about features and benefits. This was about two experienced professionals solving a complex business problem together. At the office, Barbara said nothing about the meeting. Tyler's team continued to mock her periodically. "How's that impossible deal going, Grandma?" And only 53 days left to perform a miracle. But she ignored them. Let them laugh. They'd find out soon enough. On Wednesday, the day before her meeting with Eleanor, Tyler called Barbara into a conference room. "I wanted to check in on the Continental deal," he said. "It's been 2 weeks. Have you made any progress?" "I have a meeting with their CIO tomorrow," Barbara said. Tyler blinked. "You ... what?" "I have a 30-minute meeting with Eleanor Martinez tomorrow at 2 p.m. How did you get that meeting?" "She won't even respond to our emails." "I leveraged the connection from my previous work," Barbara said. "Someone who knows both of us facilitated an introduction." "That's ... double quotes." Tyler looked genuinely surprised. "That's actually impressive." "Okay. What's your strategy for the meeting?" "To listen," Barbara said. "To understand her actual concerns about NextGen and about enterprise software transitions in general. To have a peer-to-peer conversation instead of a sales pitch. That's it. Just talk. That's how enterprise sales works," Barbara said. "You don't close deals in the first meeting. You build relationships. You establish credibility. You demonstrate that you understand their business. Then over time you earn the right to propose a solution." Tyler shook his head. "That seems really inefficient. Our typical sales cycle is 3 weeks. Prospect, demo, proposal, close. Your typical sales cycle is for SMB accounts," Barbara pointed out. "Enterprise sales takes longer, but the deals are bigger and the clients stay longer." "Whatever," Tyler said. "Good luck tomorrow. If you actually close this, it'll be incredible. If you don't... he shrugged. "Well, at least you got a meeting out of it." Translation: "I still don't think you can do this, but I'm impressed you got this far." Barbara just smiled. "See you on Friday." Continental Insurance's headquarters was in downtown Seattle, a 40-story glass building with the company logo prominently displayed. Barbara arrived at 1:47 p.m. on Thursday, early enough to compose herself, but not so early that she looked desperate. Security checked her ID and directed her to the 23rd floor. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. Eleanor Martinez's office was in the executive suite. Her assistant, a woman in her 40s who looked efficient and slightly intimidating, greeted Barbara in the waiting area. "Miss Chun, Eleanor will see you now. She has a hard stop at 2:30, so please respect her time." "Of course," Barbara said. The office was spacious but not ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A large desk with 2 monitors. Bookshelves filled with technical manuals and industry publications. Photos of what looked like Eleanor's family, husband, 2 adult children. Eleanor stood when Barbara entered. She was petite, probably 5'2", with short gray hair styled in a no-nonsense cut and wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a pantsuit and sensible heels. She looked like someone who had neither the time nor the patience for bullshit. "Ms. Chun," Eleanor said, extending her hand. "Sarah speaks very highly of you." "Thank you for meeting with me," Barbara said. "I know your time is valuable. Sarah said you wanted to have a conversation about enterprise software." "Not give me a sales pitch," Eleanor said, gesturing for Barbara to sit in one of the chairs facing her desk. "I'm holding you to that." "That's exactly right," Barbara said, sitting down. "I'm not here to pitch NextGen. I'm here to understand what Continental needs and whether we might be able to help. If we can't, I'll tell you that. Eleanor studied her for a moment. How long have you been in software sales? 36 years. I started in 1989 selling database management systems to manufacturing companies. So you were selling software when I was just starting my IT career, Eleanor said. Probably, Barbara agreed. What was your first IT role? Systems administrator for a regional bank. We were running everything on mainframes. This was before cloud computing, before SaaS. When scaling meant physically adding more servers to your data center. I remember those days, Barbara said. I sold one of my first major contracts to a bank that was migrating from mainframes to client-server architecture. The CIO was terrified the transition would crash their operations. Did it? Almost, Barbara admitted. We had a rough weekend during the cutover, but we got through it and the client ended up being a reference account for us for years. Eleanor nodded. That's the thing about enterprise technology. Everyone sells you on how easy it will be. But the reality is that any major transition is messy and risky, and could potentially destroy your business if it goes wrong, which is why you're skeptical of vendors who promise revolutionary change with no risk, Barbara said. Exactly, Eleanor said. Next-Gen sales team has sent me at least 20 emails over the past 3 years. Every email says the same thing. We're disruptive, we're cutting edge, we're going to transform your business. What they don't say is what happens when your cutting-edge software crashes at 3 a.m. and my entire operations team is locked out. What happens? Barbara said is that you need a vendor who has 24/7 support with actual technical expertise, not an outsourced call center reading from a script. You need service-level agreements with real penalties if we don't meet them. You need a disaster recovery plan that's been tested, not theoretical. And you need a vendor who understands that move fast and break things is a terrible philosophy for enterprise. Software. Eleanor looked at her with something approaching interest. Does NextGen offer all of that? Some of it, Barbara said honestly. We have 24/7 support, though I'll admit our team is still building expertise. We have SLAs, though they probably need to be more stringent for an enterprise client like Continental. We have disaster recovery, though I'd want our technical team to walk through the specifics with your IT team to make sure it meets your requirements, so you're not perfect. We're not perfect, Barbara agreed, but we're very good at certain things. Our API integrations are more robust than legacy systems. Our reporting capabilities are significantly better than what you're currently using, and our pricing model is more transparent and scalable. How do you know what we're currently using? Eleanor asked. Because I researched your technology stack before this meeting, Barbara said. You're running a customized version of Oracle ERP that's about 15 years old. It works, but it's increasingly difficult to maintain, and it doesn't integrate well with newer systems. Eleanor didn't confirm or deny. And you think NextGen could replace that? I think NextGen could potentially replace pieces of it, Barbara said carefully. A full replacement would be risky and expensive. But a phased approach, start with one operational area, prove the value, then expand, that could work. Lower risk, easier to manage, allows you to validate the solution before fully committing. That's a longer timeline, Eleanor pointed out. It's a smarter timeline, Barbara countered. Quick wins that build trust versus revolutionary changes that could fail catastrophically. Eleanor sat back in her chair, studying Barbara. You're different from the other next-gen salespeople I've dealt with. I'm older, Barbara said bluntly. I've been doing this long enough to know that flashy presentations and empty promises don't work with experienced clients. You need substance. You need honesty. You need a partner who understands that your job is to keep Continental running smoothly, not to take risks on unproven vendors. Why are you working at NextGen? Eleanor asked suddenly. With your experience, you should be a VP somewhere, not a junior account executive. Barbara hesitated. This was personal territory, but Eleanor had asked directly, and deflecting would destroy the trust she was building. I was a VP, Barbara said, at Cloudforce Systems. 3 years old. They restructured and decided they needed younger leadership. I've been unemployed or underemployed since then. I took the position at Nexen because I needed health insurance for my husband who has Parkinson's disease. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. That's ... double quotes, that's age discrimination in corporate America, Barbara finished. But it's also reality. So here I am trying to prove that 58 doesn't mean obsolete. No, Eleanor said quietly. It absolutely doesn't. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Eleanor said, I want to hear more about your phased implementation approach. Not today. I have another meeting in 3 minutes. But I'm willing to have a deeper conversation with you and your technical team. Can you put together a preliminary proposal that outlines what a Phase 1 implementation might look like for Continental? Barbara's heart was racing, but she kept her voice calm. Yes. How much detail do you want? High-level scope, timeline, rough pricing, risk mitigation strategies. Nothing too formal yet. Just enough that I can evaluate whether it's worth exploring further. I can have that to you by next Friday, Barbara said. Good. Eleanor stood, signaling the meeting was over. And Barbara, thank you for being honest. I appreciate that. Thank you for giving me your time, Barbara said, shaking Eleanor's hand. As Barbara left Continental's building and walked to her car, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. She had a foot in the door. A real opportunity. Eleanor hadn't said yes to anything yet, but she hadn't said no either. Now Barbara just needed to deliver a proposal that was so good, so well-researched, so perfectly tailored to Continental's needs, that Eleanor couldn't say no. 46 days left. Barbara spent the next 7 days building the most comprehensive proposal she'd created in her 36-year career. Not at the office, she couldn't risk Tyler's team seeing what she was working on and either sabotaging it or trying to take credit. She worked from home late into the night after Frank had gone to bed, hunched over her laptop at the kitchen table. The proposal needed to be perfect. Not flashy, not full of buzzwords and hype, but substantive, technical, honest about risks and challenges while demonstrating clear value. She started with research. Called 3 former colleagues who'd implemented similar systems at insurance companies. Read case studies. Studied Continental's specific operational challenges by analyzing their public financial reports and industry filings. Then she outlined the phased approach. Phase 1, Claims Processing Integration. Months 1 to 6, replace Continental's aging claims management module. Integrate with existing Oracle infrastructure, minimal disruption to operations, clear ROI. Estimated 23% reduction in processing time cost. $1. 8 million risk mitigation, parallel systems during transition. Phase 2, Financial Reporting Enhancement. Months 7 to 12, implement advanced reporting capabilities. Real-time financial analytics, regulatory compliance automation cost. $2.3 million ROI. Estimated $800,000 annual savings in compliance costs. Phase 3, HR and benefits management. Months 13 to 18, full integration of employee management systems, streamlined benefits administration cost. $2. 1 million ROI. Estimated 35% reduction in HR administrative costs. Total 3-year. Implementation, $10.7 million projected 3-year. ROI, $6.2 million in cost savings, but the numbers weren't the real value of the proposal. The real value was in the risk mitigation section, where Barbara addressed every concern Eleanor had mentioned or implied during their meeting. 24/7. Dedicated support team with Continental-specific training penalty clauses if NextGen failed to meet SLA commitments. Disaster recovery plan with quarterly testing, gradual transition timelines to minimize operational disruption. Executive Oversight Committee with quarterly reviews. This wasn't a proposal designed to impress young tech executives. This was a proposal designed for Eleanor Martinez, pragmatic, thorough, honest about challenges, backed by decades of implementation experience. On Thursday evening, 6 days after her meeting with Eleanor, Barbara was adding final touches when Frank shuffled into the kitchen. "It's almost midnight," he said, his voice slightly slurred. The Parkinson's affected his speech when he was tired. "You've been working on this all week." "I'm almost done," Barbara said. Frank sat down across from her. His hands were trembling more than usual. Barbara tried not to notice. "What happens if she says no?" Frank asked. Barbara looked up from her laptop. "Then I keep doing my job. I don't win the bet, but we still have health insurance. And if she says yes, then we pay off your medical bills. And I prove that I'm not obsolete." Frank reached across the table and took Barbara's hand. His grip was weak, but the intention was there. "You've never been obsolete," he said. "The world is just run by idiots who can't see what's valuable." Barbara squeezed his hand gently. "I love you. I love you too. Now finish your proposal and come to bed. You're going to be exhausted tomorrow, Friday morning." Barbara arrived at the office at 6:47 a.m. before anyone else on the sales team and sent the proposal to Eleanor. "Eleanor, as promised, please find attached a preliminary proposal for a phased implementation of NextGen's ERP solution at Continental Insurance. I've focused on minimizing risk while demonstrating clear ROI. Proposal includes specific risk mitigation strategies and a conservative timeline that prioritizes operational stability. I'm available to discuss any questions or concerns at your convenience. Best regards." Barbara chunched. She hit send, then sat back in her chair and exhaled slowly. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. Tyler and his team arrived around 9 a.m. Kyle saw Barbara at her desk and smirked. Still here, Grandma. Thought you'd have given up by now. 46 days left, Barbara said calmly. Plenty of time. Have you even gotten a meeting with Continental yet? Jasmine asked, walking over with her coffee. I've had one meeting, Barbara said, with their CIO. The smirk disappeared from Kyle's face. You met with Eleanor Martinez? 2 weeks ago? 30-minute conversation. She asked me to submit a preliminary proposal, which I sent this morning. Kyle looked at Tyler, who'd just walked in and overheard. Tyler's expression was unreadable. You submitted a proposal? Tyler asked. Preliminary proposal, Barbara corrected. High-level scope, phased implementation approach, rough pricing, without running it by me first. You gave me 60 days to close the deal, Barbara pointed out. You didn't specify that I needed approval at each stage. That single quotes S. double quotes. Tyler looked frustrated. Barbara, you're a junior A. You don't have the authority to negotiate enterprise deals independently. What if you quoted the wrong pricing? What if your proposal doesn't align with our standard terms? My pricing is based on your published rate card, Barbara said, and my proposal is structured to minimize Continental's risk while demonstrating clear value. If Eleanor accepts, you'll get the biggest deal in company history. She rejects, you lose nothing. Accept credibility with a major prospect, Tyler said. Eleanor had already rejected you 4 times, Barbara reminded him. How much credibility did you have left to lose? The sales floor had gone quiet. Everyone was watching the confrontation. Tyler's jaw tightened. If this proposal is bad, if you've embarrassed this company, then you can fire me, Barbara said. But until then, let me do my job. Tyler stared at her for a long moment, then walked to his office and slammed the door. Kyle looked at Barbara with something between respect and confusion. You've got guts, I'll give you that. I've got nothing to lose, Barbara corrected. There's a difference. Eleanor's response came at 3:47 p.m. that same day. Barbara, impressive proposal. You've addressed every concern I raised and several I hadn't articulated yet. I particularly appreciate the honest assessment of risks and the conservative timeline. I'd like to schedule a follow-up meeting with you and your technical team to discuss implementation specifics. Can you arrange for next Wednesday at 10 a.m.? Plan for 2 hours. I'll have my CTO and 2 of my senior IT directors in attendance. Eleanor Barbara read the email 3 times, her heart pounding. This was it. Eleanor was seriously considering the proposal. She was bringing in her technical team. This was moving from interesting possibility to potential deal. Barbara forwarded the email to Tyler with a simple message. Need 3 people from our technical team for a meeting at Continental next Wednesday. This is the enterprise deal we discussed. Tyler's response came back in 4 minutes. I'll be there. Who else do you need? Barbara almost laughed. Of course Tyler wanted to be there. Now that the deal looked possible, he wanted to take credit. I need our solutions architect and 2 implementation engineers who specialize in ERP systems. You're welcome to attend, but please let me lead the meeting. Eleanor expects me, not a group pitch. A longer pause this time. Then, fine, I'll coordinate the team. Wednesday morning arrived with heavy rain, typical Seattle weather. Barbara dressed even more carefully than usual. Navy suit, conservative jewelry. Her good watch, the Seiko Frank had given her for their 20th anniversary. She needed to look like someone Continental could trust to manage a $10.7 million implementation. Tyler drove to Continental's offices in his Tesla Model 3. Barbara rode with him, along with David Kim, solutions architect, and 2 implementation engineers, Rachel and James. The car ride was tense. Tyler kept trying to prep the team with his typical sales pitch energy. Remember, we're the innovative choice, the modern solution, and Barbara kept interrupting with, remember, Eleanor cares about reliability and risk mitigation, not innovation. I've been doing this for 8 years, Tyler said, annoyed. And I've been doing it for 36, Barbara countered. Eleanor is my age. She thinks like I think. Let me lead this meeting the way I know will work. Tyler said nothing, but his hands tightened on the steering wheel. They arrived at Continental at 9:52 a.m. Eleanor's assistant led them to a large conference room where Eleanor was already seated with 3 other people. Her CTO, a man in his early 50s named Robert Chun, and 2 IT directors, both appeared to be in their 40s. No young faces in the room. Barbara noted this and filed it away. Eleanor, thank you for having us, Barbara said, shaking hands. This is Tyler Morrison, our sales director, and our technical team, David Kim, Rachel Santos, and James Mitchell. Everyone shook hands and sat down. Tyler immediately opened his mouth to start talking, but Barbara smoothly cut him off. Before we dive into technical specifics, I want to establish the ground rules for today's meeting. We're here to answer your questions and address your concerns, not to pitch you. If at any point you decide NextGen isn't the right fit for Continental, please tell us directly. We'd rather know now than waste your time and ours. Eleanor's expression showed approval. I appreciate that. Let's start with infrastructure. David, can you walk us through how your system would integrate with our existing Oracle environment? For the next 90 minutes, the meeting was intensely technical. Eleanor's team asked hard questions about a PI architecture, data migration strategies, system redundancy, security protocols, disaster recovery procedures. David, Rachel, and James handled the questions well. They were competent engineers. But several times when the Continental team asked about real-world implementation challenges, Barbara stepped in with examples from her previous experience. We encountered a similar integration challenge at Pacific Northwest Insurance in 2018, she'd say. Or the data migration approach you're describing is exactly what caused problems for Western Financial in 2019. Here's what we learned from that failure. She wasn't selling. She was problem-solving alongside Continental's technical team, drawing on decades of implementation experience that Tyler's engineers didn't have. Tyler kept trying to jump in with marketing speak, our cutting-edge architecture, a revolutionary approach, and Barbara kept gently redirecting back to substance. By the end of the meeting, Eleanor's CTO was nodding. This is the first time a vendor has given us straight answers instead of marketing fluff. I'm impressed. We have one more concern, Eleanor said, looking at Barbara. Your company is young. You've only been in business for 8 years. What happens if NextGen gets acquired or goes out of business in year 2 of our implementation? We've been burned by startup vendors before. This was the question Barbara had been dreading, because it was a legitimate concern, and there was no perfect answer. You're right to worry about that, Barbara said. I can't guarantee NextGen will be around forever, but I can point to a few things. We're profitable. We have solid financial backing, and we have a customer retention rate over 90%. More importantly, our contract includes provisions for source code escrow and transition assistance if something does happen to the company. Source code escrow, Eleanor repeated. That's old school. It's old school because it works, Barbara said. If NextGen fails, you get access to the source code and can maintain the system yourself or hire another vendor to support it. You're not left stranded. Eleanor glanced at her CTO, who nodded. That addresses my primary concern. So what's the next step? Tyler asked, unable to stay quiet any longer. The next step, Eleanor said, looking at Barbara, not Tyler, is that I need to present this to our CFO and CEO. They'll want to understand the financial implications. Can you prepare a detailed ROI analysis with conservative assumptions? I can have that to you by Friday, Barbara said. Good. If the numbers work and leadership signs off, we'll move to contract negotiations. Barbara, I want you leading those negotiations from your side. Not Tyler. You. She looked at Tyler. No offense, but Barbara understands enterprise needs in a way your typical sales team doesn't. Tyler's face went red, but he forced a smile. Of course. Whatever works best for Continental. In the car ride back to the office, Tyler was silent for the first 10 minutes. Then he exploded. What the hell was that? What? Barbara asked calmly. You completely shut me out of that meeting. I'm the director of sales. This is my territory. And you treated me like I was an intern. I treated you like someone who doesn't understand how to sell to enterprise clients, Barbara corrected. Every time you opened your mouth, you used marketing buzzwords that Eleanor clearly hates. I was protecting the deal by keeping you quiet. Protecting the deal? Tyler's voice went up. I've been working enterprise sales for 8 years, and how many enterprise deals have you closed? Barbara interrupted. Silence. How many? Barbara repeated. That's not. We've closed several. How many contracts over $5 million have you personally negotiated and closed? It's more silence. I've closed 47, Barbara said. 47 deals over $5 million, including 12 over $10 million. I know what I'm doing, Tyler, and if you want this Continental deal to close, you'll let me keep doing it. Tyler said nothing for the rest of the drive. Barbara spent Thursday developing the detailed ROI analysis Eleanor had requested. She was deep into financial modeling, calculating projected cost savings across multiple operational areas when her phone rang at 2:34 p.m. The caller ID said Evergreen Care Facility. Barbara's stomach dropped. Evergreen was where Frank went for his physical therapy sessions twice a week. Hello, Miss Chun? This is Marlene from Evergreen Care. I'm calling about your husband, Frank. He had a fall during his session today. He's okay, but we've called an ambulance as a precaution. They're taking him to Harborview Medical Center. Barbara's vision blurred. What happened? He lost his balance during a walking exercise. The fall wasn't severe, but given his condition, we wanted to make sure there are no complications. I'm on my way. Barbara grabbed her purse and briefcase and ran out of the office. She didn't tell Tyler, didn't tell anyone. Just drove to Harborview as fast as Seattle traffic would allow. Frank was in the emergency room, lying on a bed with an IV in his arm. His face was pale, but he smiled weakly when he saw Barbara. "I'm fine," he said. "They're overreacting." "You fell," Barbara said, taking his hand. "I lost my balance. It happens." The ER doctor came in, a young woman who looked exhausted. "Mrs. Chun? I'm Dr. Patel. Your husband has a minor concussion and some bruising, but no broken bones or serious injuries. We want to keep him overnight for observation given his Parkinson's diagnosis." "Overnight?" Frank protested. "Barbara, I don't need—" "You're staying," Barbara said firmly. Then to Dr. Patel, "Will insurance cover this?" "It should. It's medically necessary observation." Barbara nodded, but her mind was already calculating. Even with insurance, an overnight hospital stay would cost them at least $2,000 out of pocket. Money they didn't have. Money she wouldn't have unless she closed the Continental deal. She stayed with Frank until visiting hours ended at 9 p.m. He fell asleep around 8:30, exhausted from the day's trauma. Barbara sat in the uncomfortable hospital chair watching him breathe, thinking about everything they'd been through. 43 years of marriage, raising their daughter Claire together, building a life, saving for retirement, planning for a future that was supposed to include travel and grandchildren, and quiet evenings without financial stress. And instead, they had Parkinson's disease and medical bills, and Barbara working a job that paid a third of what she was worth, trying to prove to people half her age that she still had value. At 9:17 p.m., Barbara's phone buzzed with an email from Eleanor Martinez. Subject: ROI analysis. Barbara, I know we agreed you'd send the ROI analysis Friday, but something has come up that accelerates our timeline. Our board meeting is Monday morning. If I'm going to present this proposal for approval, I need your analysis by tomorrow, Friday, end of business. Can you make that work? Barbara read the email twice. Then she looked at Frank, sleeping peacefully despite the 4 and the hospital monitors beeping softly. She had 2 choices. Stay with Frank overnight and risk losing the Continental deal because she couldn't deliver the analysis on time, or go home and work through the night to finish the analysis. It wasn't really a choice. Barbara kissed Frank's forehead gently. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I love you." Then she left the hospital and drove home to finish the ROI analysis. Barbara worked through the night, coffee, spreadsheets, financial models, case studies, comparative analyses, conservative projections, moderate projections, optimistic projections. Every number verified, every assumption documented, every claim backed by data. By 4:47 a.m. Friday morning, she had a 32-page ROI analysis that proved Continental Insurance would save approximately $6.20 million over 3 years by implementing next-gen solution. She sent it to Eleanor at 5:03 a.m., then collapsed on her couch for 2 hours of sleep. Her alarm went off at 7 a.m. Barbara dragged herself to the shower, got dressed, and drove to the hospital to check on Frank before going to the office. Frank was awake, eating hospital breakfast, looking better than he had the night before. "You left," he said. "I had to finish the analysis," Barbara said. "I'm sorry." "Did you finish it?" "I sent it at 5 a.m. Frank smiled. "That's my Barbara. Never gives up. I felt guilty the entire time." "Don't," Frank said. "You're doing this for us, for our future." "I understand that." A nurse came in to check Frank's vitals. "Doctor says you can probably go home this afternoon if everything looks good." Frank said, "I'm fine. Go to work. Close your deal." Barbara kissed him. "I love you." "I love you too. Now go be brilliant." Eleanor's response came at 11:34 a.m. "Barbara, exceptional work on the ROI analysis. You've made a compelling business case. I'm presenting to our board Monday morning at 9 a.m. If they approve, and I believe they will, we'll move directly to contract negotiations. How quickly can you turn around a final contract?" Barbara stared at the email. This was happening. Eleanor was going to recommend the deal to Continental's board. If they approved, this would become real. She replied, "Eleanor, I can have contract terms ready within 48 hours of board approval. Thank you for the opportunity to earn Continental's business." Barbara then she walked to Tyler's office and knocked on the door. "Come in." Tyler was at his computer, looking stressed. He glanced up when Barbara entered. "Eleanor Martinez is presenting my proposal to Continental's board on Monday," Barbara said. "If they approve, we move to final contract negotiations. I wanted to give you advance notice so you can loop in legal and finance." Tyler stared at her. "You're serious? She's actually recommending this?" "Yes." "Holy shit," Tyler said. Then catching himself, "I mean, that's great. That's amazing. If this closes, it's the biggest deal in company history." If it closes, Barbara agreed. It's not done yet. But you think it will close? I think Eleanor wants it to close. I think she's built internal support for it. I think if the board approves and we don't screw up the contract negotiations, it will close. Tyler leaned back in his chair. 31 days. You said you'd close it in 60 days. It's been 29. 31 days technically. But yes. And if you do close it, no. Tyler swallowed. I owe you $10,000. You do, Barbara confirmed. Out of my own pocket, that was the bet. Tyler looked like he wanted to argue to find a way out of the bet, but he'd made it publicly in front of his entire team. He couldn't back out now without looking like a coward. Fine, he said. Close the deal. Earn your $10,000. Monday morning, Barbara sat at her desk refreshing her email every 30 seconds, waiting for word from Eleanor. The Continental Board meeting was happening. Right now. Eleanor was presenting Barbara's proposal, the ROI analysis, the implementation plan. The board would ask questions, debate the investment, ultimately vote on whether to approve. Barbara had done everything she could. Now it was out of her hands. At 11:47 a.m., her phone rang. Eleanor Martinez. Barbara answered immediately. Eleanor? We got board approval, Eleanor said, and Barbara could hear the smile in her voice. They loved the phased approach and the conservative ROI projections. We're moving forward. Can you come to our offices tomorrow to discuss final contract terms? Barbara closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. Yes, absolutely. What time? 10 a.m. Bring your legal and finance people. This is going to be a detailed negotiation. We'll be there. After hanging up, Barbara sat at her desk for a full minute, just breathing. She'd done it. Eleanor had said yes. The board had approved. Now it was just contract negotiations, and Barbara had negotiated hundreds of contracts. This was really happening. She walked to Tyler's office. He looked up when she entered. Continental's board approved the deal, Barbara said. Contract negotiations start tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tyler's expression went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, excitement, anxiety, and finally something that looked like resignation. You actually did it, he said quietly. Not yet, Barbara said. Contract negotiations can still fall apart, but we're close. How close? 90%, Barbara estimated. Assuming we don't make any major mistakes in the negotiations. What do you need from me? Nothing, Barbara said. I'll handle the negotiations. I just need legal and finance to be available to review terms. You're not going to let me be in the meeting? Eleanor specifically asked for me to lead the negotiations, Barbara said. If you want to be there, you can be there. But you need to let me drive. Tyler nodded slowly. This is your deal. I get it. Just bring it home, okay? That's the plan. Contract negotiations took 3 days. Continental's legal team was thorough, professional, and demanding. They wanted favorable payment terms, strict SLA commitments, penalty clauses for non-performance, and extensive warranty provisions. Barbara negotiated carefully, giving ground on issues that didn't matter while holding firm on issues that did. She'd done this dance dozens of times before. She knew when to push, when to compromise, when to walk away from the table to let the other side think things through. Tyler attended the first day of negotiations, but after watching Barbara work, he stopped showing up. She didn't need him. She was in her element. On Thursday afternoon, November 27th, exactly 31 days after Barbara's bet with Tyler, Eleanor Martinez and Barbara Chun, signed the final contract. $10.7 million over 3 years. Phased implementation starting January 2026. Every term carefully negotiated, every risk carefully mitigated. Eleanor shook Barbara's hand. This is the beginning of a good partnership. Thank you for understanding what Continental needed instead of just selling us what you wanted to sell. Thank you for giving me the chance, Barbara said. Friday morning, Barbara walked into NextGen's office at 8:47 a.m. carrying a leather folder. Inside was the signed Continental insurance contract. Tyler's sales team was already at their desks. Skyle, Jasmine, Marcus, the others. They looked up when Barbara walked in. She walked directly to Tyler's office and knocked. He opened the door, saw the folder in her hands, and his face went pale. Is that... Signed contract, Barbara confirmed. Continental Insurance. $10.7 million over 3 years. Closed in 31 days as promised. The sales floor had gone silent. Everyone was watching. Tyler took the folder with trembling hands and opened it. Scanned the signature page. Saw Eleanor Martinez's signature, Continental's corporate seal, the contract amount. You actually did it, he whispered. I did, Barbara said. Which means you owe me $10,000. And you're announcing this deal at the company all-hands meeting Monday. And I'm being moved to enterprise accounts permanently. Those were the terms of our bet. Tyler looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked out of his office onto the sales floor. Team, he called out, and everyone stopped working. Barbara just closed Continental Insurance. $10.7 million over 3 years. The biggest deal in NextGen's history. Silence. Then Kyle said, wait, she actually closed it, Tyler confirmed. In 31 days, which means I was wrong. About her abilities, about her value, about whether someone her age could compete in modern sales. He looked at Barbara. I owe you an apology. And $10,000. The $10,000 would be nice, Barbara said. The apology is more important. I'm sorry, Tyler said, and he actually sounded sincere. I underestimated you. I made assumptions based on your age instead of your experience. I was wrong. Yes, Barbara said. You were. She looked around the sales floor at the young faces staring at her. Kyle, who'd called her grandma on her first day. Jasmine, who'd mocked her briefcase. Marcus, Derek, all of them. I want to be clear about something, Barbara said. I didn't close this deal to prove I'm better than you. I closed it because I have 36 years of experience that taught me how to sell to enterprise clients. Experience you don't have yet because you haven't lived long enough to acquire it. That doesn't make you bad at sales. It makes you young, which means you have time to learn, time to build the skills and relationships and instincts that come from decades of doing this work. But it also means you need to stop treating older workers like we're obsolete, because we're not. We're resources. We're teachers. We're people who've already made the mistakes you're about to make and can help you avoid them. She picked up her briefcase, the one from 1994, the one they'd mocked, and held it up. You laughed at this briefcase because it's old, but it's lasted 31 years because it was built with quality. It's carried my materials to hundreds of meetings, closed millions of dollars in deals, and it's still here. That's what experience is. It's quality that lasts. It's knowledge that compounds. It's value that doesn't decrease with time. Barbara set down her briefcase and looked directly at Tyler. I'll take that $10,000 in a check, please. Made out to Barbara Chun, and I'll see you Monday morning for the all-hands meeting. 12 months after Barbara closed the Continental Insurance deal, NextGen Software Solutions looked like a different company. Barbara was now Vice President of Enterprise Sales, overseeing a team of 12 account executives. Half of them were under 35, half were over 45. The mix worked beautifully. Young AEs brought energy and tech fluency. Experienced AEs brought relationships and strategic thinking. Together they closed deals neither group could have closed alone. Enterprise revenue was up 340% year over year. Customer retention was at an all-time high. NextGen was being written up in industry publications as a company that valued diversity of experience, not just diversity of demographics. Tyler was still director of sales, but he'd learned. He no longer made assumptions based on age. He no longer mocked older workers or treated youth as a qualification in itself. And he'd paid Barbara the $10,000, publicly at the all-hands meeting with a check blown up to poster size for effect. Barbara had used the money to pay down Frank's medical bills. Frank was doing okay. The Parkinson's was progressing. It always progressed, but slowly. He still had good days. He still did crossword puzzles. He still smiled when Barbara came home from work. And now, with Barbara's VP salary and stock options, they could afford the best care available. The specialists, the medications, the physical therapy that kept Frank mobile and engaged. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were living. On a Tuesday in November, exactly 1 year after closing the Continental deal, Barbara received an email from Eleanor Martinez. Barbara, I wanted to give you a 1-year update. The NextGen implementation has exceeded our expectations. Claims processing time is down 31%, we projected 23%. Our compliance costs dropped by $950,000 this year. And my executive team is so impressed that they've approved Phase 2 ahead of schedule. More importantly, working with you has changed how I think about vendor relationships. You weren't just selling software, you were solving problems. That's rare. I've recommended you to 3 other CIOs in my professional network. Expect calls from them. Consider it my way of saying thank you. Eleanor Barbara forwarded the email to Tyler with a simple note. 3 referrals from Continental. This is how enterprise sales works. You build trust, you deliver value, and clients become your best salespeople. Tyler's response, I'm learning. Thank you for teaching me. That evening, Barbara came home to find Frank in the living room with their daughter Claire and her 2 kids. Claire lived in Portland now, had moved from Texas after saving enough money to relocate somewhere with better schools, helped by the financial support Barbara had been able to provide once her salary increased. "Surprise," Claire said. The kids wanted to see Grandma. Barbara's grandchildren, Nima, age 7, and Lucas, age 9, ran to hug her. Barbara held them tight, breathing in their shampoo and kid energy smell, feeling grateful in a way that made her chest ache. This was what the Continental deal had bought. It's not just money, though money mattered, but security, stability, the ability to help her family, to spend time with her grandchildren, to not wake up every morning wondering if they'd be able to afford Frank's medications. After dinner, after the kids were in bed in the guest room, Barbara and Frank and Claire sat in the living room talking. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Claire said. "What you did this past year, proving yourself at that company, closing that huge deal, becoming a VP, it's incredible." "I just did my job," Barbara said. "You did more than that," Claire said. "You showed an entire company that age discrimination is stupid and expensive. You changed their culture. You made them better. And you made me better," Frank added, squeezing Barbara's hand. "You saved us. You know that, right? If you hadn't gotten that job, if you hadn't closed that deal, I don't know where we'd be. We'd have figured something out," Barbara said. "No," Frank said seriously. "We wouldn't have. We were 3 months from losing everything. You saved us." Barbara felt tears prickling at her eyes. "I couldn't let you down. Not after everything we've been through." "You could never let me down," Frank said. "But I'm glad you didn't have to try." On a Friday in December, Barbara was preparing to leave for the weekend when Tyler knocked on her office door. "Got a minute?" "Sure. Come in." Tyler sat down in one of the chairs facing her desk. He looked nervous. "I want to tell you something," he said. "You changed my life this past year. Not just professionally, though you definitely did that, but personally. The way I think about people, about value, about what makes someone good at their job. I was an arrogant asshole when you started here. I thought being young and energetic meant I was automatically better than someone older. I thought experience was just another word for outdated. You proved me wrong. And you did it without making me feel stupid, without crushing me. You just showed me a better way. I have a younger brother," Tyler continued. "He's 53. He got laid off from his marketing job 2 years ago and hasn't been able to find work since. Every company tells him he's too expensive or overqualified or not a good cultural fit. I called him yesterday and told him about you, about what you did here. And then I recommended him to our marketing director who's looking for a senior content strategist. He's interviewing next week." Barbara felt her throat tighten. "Tyler, that's that's me learning from you," Tyler finished. "That's me trying to be better than I was. Because you showed me what's possible when you give people a chance instead of judging them by their birth date." After Tyler left, Barbara sat in her office for a few minutes, just thinking. A year ago, she'd walked into NextGen's office desperate, financially devastated, willing to take any job just to get health insurance. She'd been mocked, dismissed, told she was too old to compete, and she'd proven them all wrong. Not through anger or revenge, but through competence. Through doing the work better than anyone else could do it. Through teaching younger people instead of resenting them. Through changing one company's culture one person at a time. She picked up her phone and texted Eleanor Martinez. "Thank you for taking a chance on me a year ago. That 30-minute meeting changed my life." Eleanor's response came back in 2 minutes. "Thank you for being worth the chance. You changed my perspective on what enterprise ready really means. It's not about age, it's about expertise." Barbara smiled, packed up her briefcase, the same one from 1994, still going strong, and headed home to Frank. She'd done what she set out to do, proved her value, saved her family, changed a company's culture. But more than that, she'd proven something bigger. That experience doesn't expire. Wisdom doesn't have an age limit. And competence is forever. Age discrimination still existed. It probably always would. Corporate America still worshipped youth and treated older workers as disposable. But Barbara Chun, 59 years old, VP of Enterprise Sales, had proven that older workers weren't just valuable, they were irreplaceable. And she was just getting started.